All right, here we are. Ready, Freddie?
Yes, sir.
All right, we're recording here. I'll start us off. Welcome to the Let's Make Them Pay podcast. I am your host, Scott Bennett. Today, we have a very special guest, a man who needs little introduction to many of you, I'm sure. In fact, if anything, he should probably be doing the introduction because his announcer voice is so famous. Greg Proops, longtime star of Whose Line Is It Anyway? Improv legend, also a classic stand-up comedian, star of stage and screen, voiceover artist, published author, and host of his own podcast, The Smartest Man in the World. Just out recently, on sale now, his latest live comedy album, Kidding, But Still. He's also touring with Whose Line, plenty of West Coast dates still happening later this month. Visit Greg Proops for more. Greg, it is a true pleasure to have you here today. Thank you for taking the time.
Hello, Scott. Thanks for your patience, baby.
Oh, man. Greg, I almost died of embarrassment during our last brief meeting. This is something that can only happen in the age of social media, I think. You give anybody even the tiniest bit of internet fame, and they lose all sense of perspective. I got a message from your publicist. Would you like to talk to Greg Proops? And I immediately jumped to the conclusion. Greg will be interviewing me. Here's me with the tiniest bit of internet fame, and suddenly I'm like, yeah, Greg Proops wants to interview me. Smartest Man in the World podcast. I thought I made it. Proops wants to talk. So there you were. For my ego, you were there for my ego death. We both show up to this Zoom call last week. We're both waiting for the other one to start the interview. And then I ask, which podcast is this for? And your publicist says, yours. I thought for one moment I could pull it off. I scrambled to do a screen record. No preparation, no questions. I'm not an improv genius like you, sir. It would have been ugly. You clicked off your camera, no doubt because you were laughing your ass off. I appreciated the gesture, but here we are again. So thank you so much for agreeing to come back. I'm much better prepared this time, I swear.
So you're going to interview me, right, Scott?
That's the plan.
But I'll take over in any
Yeah,
point
I'll just
if you
pass
feel
the
shaky.
baton
Okay.
and then you hand it right back. That'd be great. I love that. Greg, you've been a famous person since the 1980s. What do you make of this era of social media where any chump with a smartphone can get millions of followers? And I'm asking on behalf of people who have millions of followers because I'm not anywhere near
Well,
that
I mean,
big.
you know, I think in some ways, of course, it's been a huge positive because you're not relying on the gatekeepers of network television and all of the old-fashioned stuff. On the other hand, I think it leads to, sometimes people aren't ready for the job that they've taken on for themselves, whether they're ready to be host of a show, because a podcast is an interview show, and now almost all podcasts are basically television shows. There's very few that are just audio. Mine's still audio, although my film club now is a video one. So there you are. But I'm very old-fashioned. And I think that a lot of the comedians that have gained fame over the interwebs would have benefited from some time in front of live audiences.
Yeah, the seasoning factor. There was this show Stick I just watched on Apple TV, Owen Wilson, and it's about this 17-year-old kid who becomes a professional golfer like in the course of the season. And that was one thing that stood out to me is like he didn't have any of the seasoning,
Right.
like none of the growth that comes along the way with becoming a pro.
Well, there's that. I mean, I always like to quote Star Wars. So Harrison Ford says, good against remotes is one thing and good against the living is another. And unless you can, if you're a stand-up comic, if you can't get up in front of a room full of people and make them laugh, then you're not quite a stand-up comic yet. You're someone making little videos
Yeah.
and content, as they call it.
Indeed.
Which content seems so sterile to me. I'd like to think of myself as more of a bohemian, and I didn't get into this business of comedy to make content. I got into it to tell jokes and make people laugh. So people who look at their stuff as content, and you can you can tell the difference, Scott. When people don't know it, pardon me, when people don't know what they're talking about, or they're doing it simply to do it, or there's lots of famous like movie stars and TV stars now who have podcasts who started them up during COVID maybe, or they're doing it now. And there's no reason for them to have one. I mean, like you see,
It was just time on their
right? You
hands.
see every news anchor, especially the ones on MSNBC, they all have podcasts now. And you think, well, they have to because they have to compete in the same world we're all competing in. But at the same time, you're like, was it really necessary that every human on Earth have a podcast?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like
Mm,
everybody's their own brand now, and you don't get to attach to the mothership. Like it doesn't have the advantage that it did. Like your example of the MSNBC host is so great, is such a great example because you look at their followings and they can be absolutely minuscule. Like their live streams, they're
yeah,
getting like double digits in some of their live streams. And it's like this is a huge person on cable TV making tons of money, but in that atmosphere, all bets are off.
it
It's
is. And
weird.
also, I
It's
think
a weird situation.
comics find this out that some comics are enormously popular on the internet and it translates into sales, live sales, which is how we make our living. And then other comics have huge followings and they can't draw. And it's because their following is spread out across the universe
Yeah.
and not concentrated in the places where they're trying to play or whatever. So, we're all going to get it figured out. My biggest objection to social
Right.
media is that the oligarchs who own it are almost to a person right-wing fascists. And I don't agree with anything they say, and I think that their personal
Yeah,
philosophy
I
is
hear you.
wretched. And I think that it was a very starry state of affairs that we let them be the ones who own all this. It would have been really nice if I can't remember the British guy's name who
Yeah.
invented the internet, the one they dragged out at the 2012 Olympics in London. But he wanted it to be free for everyone and it to be an exchange of ideas. Um,
Yeah.
and then it's not. It's basically X X is a Nazi symbol. I mean, he made it a Nazi symbol. He changed it from Twitter, which was a lovely little blue bird that fooled you because Jack Dorsey was as big a fascist as anyone on earth. And then, uh, and then there's Zuckerberg with Insta, which he bought, right? I mean, he didn't even own Insta. So there's a fellow on Threads that I follow named Carl Bode, and I don't even know who he is really, or I don't know him personally, but he is off and on about these billionaires and how they're treated by the media. And he calls the
Yeah.
way journalism is now, billionaire said something is the style of media. Because, like, for instance, today, Musk is going public with
Yeah.
Sissy SpaceX or whatever. And uh, it's overvalued. It's
Ah,
garbage. There's literally no guarantee.
right.
Yeah,
Well, they just
there's no
fold an
guarantee that
X
any of
into
this is
it.
going to turn a profit.
Yeah.
When he
Yeah.
keeps saying things like, what was it the other week? He said, we're going to have AR farms in space or whatever. No, we're not. We're not. We're not going to Mars. Yeah,
Yeah. How's that
we're
Hyperloop
not going to
going out in
Mars.
California?
Yeah, we're not going to another planet.
Never happened.
The idea of
Yeah.
physically going to another planet is still technically impossible. There, I've said it. I don't want to bum everyone out because they watch Star Trek or whatever or Star Wars, but it's literally not in our grasp yet. It's going to take many generations for all of this to happen. Yeah, we've been
Right.
imagining this since
Right.
Jules Verne. I mean, in the Middle Ages, people thought of space flight, and in the Legend of Alexander tale from the Middle Ages, he flies into space on a balloon, and the idea that we would be in the stars isn't new at all. But listening to right wing, drugged out Nazis talk about their lies and then granting them the veracity that they do not have is where I get off on social media. And secondly, um,
Yeah.
we all want to be part of the conversation. You know, we really do, right? Like, you want your voice to be heard. But really the machine that we're pouring our heart into is an algorithm and is no more receptive to you than a slot machine.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah,
Yeah.
there is a lot of geniality. I wouldn't have met you if our Brittany hadn't put us together. And now I've read your Substack, and I know who you are, and I see where you're coming from, and all that. So that's the positive part,
Oh,
that like-minded people can get together.
thank you.
And I thought it really during COVID it was fantastic because we were all trapped, and COVID wasn't fantastic. I mean
Yeah.
the use of social media, and we could do Zoom shows for comedy during COVID, which weren't ideal or optimal for comics. On the other hand, it made me really reconsider all the people who can't get out of their house, and how important it is to them to have a show that comes directly to them, like this show,
Yeah.
because they can watch it on their phone. They can watch it at home.
Yeah.
If they're handicapped or in some way, immune deficient or whatever, that they can't get out in the world, this is so important. I think there's a
Right.
million wonderful uses for all this technology, and that we've let the people who want to extract the value from everything. And what's that old expression, Scott? They know the price of everything, right? Yeah. The value
But the
of our
value of nothing.
lives is
Yep.
connecting with one another.
Yep.
And even more valuable is when like-minded people get together. But even more valuable than that is when people who disagree get together and hash it out. But that doesn't happen.
Mm.
Social media is not designed that way.
You know,
Yeah.
it reacts to our biggest emotions, and then that's what pushes out to everybody. So that's a sad state. But yeah, I hear you completely about billionaires running the algorithms, and personally, as a person who's an anti-capitalist, I think I face a lot of suppression in those algorithms because
Yeah.
they just do not want that message out there.
No, they don't. They don't even want to hear it, because they're delicate little daffodils. They blow in the
That's
breeze and
right.
then they break over. I mean, when Jeff Bezos went and did that interview 2 weeks ago, where he said, "If I paid my taxes, it wouldn't help waitresses." It was like maybe the most disingenuous thing that any humans ever said. Of course it would. Of course, billionaires
Oh
being
yeah, I mean,
taxed
how
would.
many of these billionaires could solve the hunger crisis or solve so many of these worldwide problems that we have just with a fraction of their net worth? It's disgusting.
Right, and we know two for sure. We know Mackenzie Scott, and we know Melinda Gates, and we know Warren Buffett does some work in that regard. Zuckerberg had all that charity in mind, and then when he realized that his Nazi algorithm was much more of a money spinner, and that he could get to sit next to Quiet Piggy at the White House and kiss his ass and stuff, then that was much more appealing to him. And so now he's gotten rid of all the charities and
Yeah.
basically just wants to control the information flow. Having said that, Scott, you saw a week and a half ago, he's been in court over and over again with parents suing him because they're afraid their children's minds are being corrupted, and their mental and emotional development is absolutely impeded by the giant algorithm that we're all sucking into. You and I are old enough to remember putting a poster on a telephone pole or on a
Mhm.
bulletin board, and they had little tear off things at the bottom that said where the number
Yes,
was. I mean, we remember all
absolutely.
that because people go, "Well, how did you live before that?" It was like, well, we did. How about that? We phoned each other because, by the
Pre-internet,
way,
we figured it out.
right? The phone is an amazing instrument, and
Yeah.
the thing that no one uses it for anymore that's still so wonderful is talking. And uh, it was described years and years and years ago. I remember as a kid first reading about it. There's so few things in your life where you put it up to your head like this, and it's right in your ear. It's someone talking to you really directly. And the phone is a magic instrument. And that's how we operated on everything up until,
Yeah.
25 years ago. Literally, you
Yeah.
got on the phone, you phoned someone, even if they were in England or Australia, you got up at the middle of the night and phoned them. That's how I put gigs together. That's how everybody did everything. And I'm not
Yeah.
saying it was a better way, but there's something more organic about speaking to
Yeah.
people. Um,
And I think, I see the young kids, like, they don't even know how to use a phone now.
yeah.
And
Or
they
memorize any
get
phone
so
numbers.
shy. Yeah, they get so shy if they actually have to talk to somebody who they
Yeah,
don't know, and they'll do anything to get out of it. It's like
yeah,
now we've gone so far in the opposite direction. I think the pandemic also had something to do with that, with
yeah.
everybody being isolated, and these kids grow up semi-isolated for a couple years, and now everybody like this. There's this total epidemic of shyness I see with the younger generation. They're so shy.
Right? And yet at the same time, have access to way more information than we had access to. We would have to go to the
Oh my god, yeah,
library or go to the college library and look on the microfiche. Hello.
yeah,
We
oh
had
yeah, I
to,
did that. Or
right, when
look
you had
up
to read,
books and just hope there's something in there that
right.
will relate to what you want to learn about.
Exactly. I mean, I see you have a library behind you, which I appreciate. I don't because I'm being held hostage here. But uh, you know, what was it? John Waters, the great filmmaker, said, if you go to someone's house and you want to sleep with them and you get there and they don't have any books, don't do it. But, I mean, again, that's
Another
old
one, if they
fashioned.
say that Ayn Rand, their favorite book is by Ayn Rand, that's another like total like
Oh,
it's
talk
over. Red
about a
flag, we're done.
boner kill. I mean, anyone.
Total boner kill.
Yeah, no,
Is
no
there a
one
bigger
should.
boner kill in the world than Ayn Rand? I don't
No,
think so.
no, no one should say their favorite author is Ayn Rand. It's the kind of stuff we were forced uh, to read in eighth grade, and I avoided it utterly. I've never
Yeah.
watched an Ayn Rand thing. I've never read her. I know her
No.
philosophy, and of course,
Yeah.
she sponged off the government, much like every right wing asshole. They're they want to talk about how everybody sponges off the government, and then they do it more than anybody, and that's where
Totally.
the cognitive dissonance comes in. For dissonance, not dissidents. They are not dissidents. They are dissonants. You saw Zuckerberg's super yacht going around the world this week because it's been well reported on the. No one on
Yes.
earth needs a super yacht. And I'll go even further. My wife Jennifer, who's a very wise person, said nothing good has ever happened on a yacht. Nothing that helped
Yeah.
society. Nothing that helped women. Certainly, they're basically little sexual assault palaces that they build.
Natalie Wood? I don't know. We can't say
That was a
anything.
very tiny yacht. That was just a small craft. But yes, the super yacht is, what's his name? Robert Mercer has a super yacht. You know and Zuckerberg has a
It's
super
the
yacht.
status symbol.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I was lucky enough to go to France last year with my wife, and people always say, Scott, why do you take your wife to France every year? And it's like, because I want her to love me.
Yeah.
So we went to the south of France, which we hadn't been to in ages, and we went down to, the rich people area, the Riviera, and we're not staying at their hotels or whatever, and we're not staying on the yachts. But from where you'd eat, you would see a vast ocean of yachts,
Oh my
and
God.
so you remember the story by Edgar Allan Poe, The Mask of the Red Death, where they're
Yeah, a plague story.
yes, they're in a. I always loved it during COVID. I've brought up COVID more than any guest you're ever going to have. Prince Prospero's in his castle, and all of his rich friends have come to hide with him from the Red Death. And people are outside the walls. The public is screaming, "Please take us in. We're all going to die of the Red Death." And instead, and the word mask in this instance is the archaic version of mask. It doesn't mean a facial mask. It means a ball party, a soiree, a fete. And so the mask of the Red Death is the party they throw. So they have this enormous party with all the rich people. They won't let the poor people in. They're dying and crying outside the gate. And they all get the Red Death. The Red Death appears on the dance floor. And it takes part in the giant dance they do. And then Poe, because Poe is so grim and fantastically, retributive, no one gets off easy in Poe, right? No one gets out alive. He just kills them all and is like, and then the last paragraph of it is about them and their vainglory, their ego, their lack of humanity, that they, instead of having everyone come in and maybe all being safe. And that's what those yachts remind me of.
Yeah.
It's just when Bezos had that giant wedding in Venice and they closed the place off, and him and his wife are trotting around in their rich stuff, and like, dude, the world's on fire right now. What are you? What
Yeah.
are you, Nero? You know,
Yeah.
we
Totally.
have 4 or 5 touchstones for this, right? There's Marie Antoinette, which is a
Absolutely.
bit unfair because she was
Mhm.
not the king, and she wasn't as ratty as everyone makes her out to be, quite frankly. And her portraitist was a woman. Her Pacific court painter was a woman, and not in a lot of women in the 18th century employed other women as their, who's very,
Impressive.
yeah. And they blamed her for everything because one, she wasn't French. She was
Right.
Austrian, so the French have never, knew. And then Nero, because when Rome burned, he apparently took up his lyre and he played it. And the thing is, Nero reminds me of none of them want to be artists,
Mm.
Nero really wanted to be a performer, and when he was emperor, would go to all the giant poetry contests in Greece. He would sail over with his retinue, and he had a group of young men that were what in the old theater days they call a claque, which means they started the applause or they started the boos against the people they didn't like, right? They're, a giant group in the audience that can make the audience do whatever, right? And so he would get up and give these declamations and in his costume, and he would do, Greek tragedy and whatnot. And he always won, right? And you weren't allowed to
Mm.
sleep during it or leave or get up or pee or anything. Like he was a maniac about it. So when he died, when they ran Nero to ground, and they did run him to ground. And by the way, Seneca was one of his best friends, who you often read. You see what's his name with his stoicism all the time on Instagram.
Indeed.
That cat.
Indeed.
And he's,
Hmm.
he's got a good point. Stoicism is certainly valid as anything else. When Nero died, the Romans committed seppuku, right? That, like the Japanese.
Oh,
One of
okay.
the
Yeah.
big tenets of being dignitas and honorarium and all that was you would take your own life, but you had to have the balls to do it, and he didn't, and so he had his slaves stab him, and he said, and you're going to love this, Scott. Apparently, now mind you, this is history, so who knows if it's true. He said when his slave stabbed him, "What an artist dies with me." Like he still thought he was the living shit, even though everyone was quaking
Yeah.
with fear when he got up to perform because he wasn't that good, you know.
Oh
And
God. Can you
that's what
imagine King Charles does his stand-up set? Everybody has to laugh and clap.
right? I mean, the difference was like when King Charles got up at that terrible dinner they had, he used guile and his excellent education. I mean, he's very well educated. He speaks French. Not only that, Charles speaks Welsh because he was the
Oh.
Prince of Wales, and that was his post when Elizabeth was alive, and he was the oldest son. They make you the Prince of Wales, and he did the Welsh people a favor and learned to speak their language, which is a very arcane language, and only a
Yeah,
few.
not an easy one, I don't think, to
No,
learn.
I don't even think a million people speak it. And
Yeah.
I'm not giving him, he's part of the royalty, so, but of course he didn't ask to be born into it. But he gave that great speech and basically read Quiet Piggy the Riot Act, and Quiet Piggy hadn't the slightest notion he was being read the Riot Act because articulation
Classic.
and he
I mean, I
doesn't.
don't know. He's probably got a sense for that, right? Like he knows when people are shitting all over him.
He does because he's more sensitive than any human alive. That's all he thinks about.
Totally,
Clearly, he
totally.
doesn't think about helping or doing anything or being or doing his job. His job's never entered into it. This was a way to stay out of jail and steal money. And so,
Yeah,
uh,
absolutely. I totally agree. No, now you brought up we brought up King Charles, and this brings to something that I wanted to ask you about because I'm curious because I've always wanted to live overseas, and you were living in London, doing Who's Line for like 10 years.
like 5 years,
Okay, 5 years.
but
So
we
I
did
just
Who's
want to
Line for
know
10 years.
about right, and still continue to make appearances and do the live show. But I want to know, like, what was it like being an American celebrity in the British showbiz during that time period? Like, you're mingling with the UK's celebrity set. What was that like? Were there other Americans there besides the Who's Line guys?
Yeah, when I was there, Rich Hall came over, who you may remember from SNL.
Classic, great
And
impressionist.
a friend of mine named Dave Fulton moved over from Seattle, and he lives there still, and is still a
Nice.
comedian there. Scott Capurro, who also lives in England, he's a comic from San Francisco, a friend of mine. He's happens to be gay, but he moved over during that time too. Um, and then Doug Stanhope would come over, and Caroline Ray. I mean, I would see lots of comics over there. 5, 7 years ago when I was there at Edinburgh, W. Camo Bell, who's also from San Francisco, had just done a one-man show there that really helped launch him. And then he got the CNN show after that and all that. So it was great living there then. And this is why it was the 90s, and the internet existed, but it was in a primitive form. So we all had computers, and
Yeah.
you had to take a paper clip to make them start over. Remember that when they would
Yes.
stop working, you
Reset.
took a paper clip and you shoved it into the, um,
I still use that move sometimes. I had a little router that I had to reboot.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. You just bang on it. And
Yeah,
So
the old paperclip trick.
there was in those days probably 10, 12 newspapers in England and only 4 TV channels. There was 5 by the time I left, and cable was just sort of getting started. They hadn't really hooked everybody up with cable yet. So as a comic, I was asked to write for newspapers, give my opinion on opinion shows, go on political shows as well as comedy shows. Plus, they do loads of panel shows
Yeah,
and that kind of thing. So you were forced to acquit yourself in a bunch of ways that stand-up comics are never asked to do here. You had to give your
yeah,
opinion, and because you're in England, especially in those days, not so much anymore because their lack of education, the destruction of their educational system, like ours, has been devastating. Um,
thanks neoliberalism.
yeah, right. Because they sold off everything, and they have so many Tories in there for so long. And the whole Tory idea of government was to just not have government, basically.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
no education, no healthcare. Um, they you were out if you gave your opinion at a party in England, for instance, um, no one let you off the hook and went, oh, right. They would go, why do you think that? And what are your
I love that
reasons?
about British culture.
And so I learned there that you had to back up what you were saying, the exact opposite of the United States, where people
Yeah,
literally say the stupidest things on earth, give no backup for them whatsoever. And now we see where we are. I mean, particularly with the White House. He literally goes on TV and just goes 14. Like today, he went 15, 14, 13, 14, 14 at a press conference. That was supposed to be the number of bombs we've dropped on Iran. And he just started using numbers 15,
yeah,
18, 12, 15, 18. No one knows those numbers. And we allow that. And you would have never allowed that. It's infantile. I saw that they're going to bring Elizabeth Hasselbeck back on CBS. And I remember her, she has no qualifications whatsoever to give her opinion because she's a moron. And I mean, I'm not just picking on her,
I mean, she did. She was a finalist on Survivor, Greg.
right?
I mean, come on.
But she said, I remember they were having an argument over abortion or something at one point on The View, and some of the other people contested her crappy opinion, and she burst into tears. And she said,
Mm,
well, I may not know all the facts, but I know how I feel.
mm.
And so we've replaced, as Isaac Asimov said, you're not allowed to put your feelings where facts go. And was it Tip O'Neill who said, or was it Tip O'Neill? You're entitled to your opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. And we've left
Right.
those 2 precepts go. We've let that go. So when I was in England, you were really forced to. I would have to write a short piece. I wrote for magazines. I would write a little bit for the Telegraph. I hosted radio shows. I hosted documentaries. I did a documentary on stand-up comedy, baseball, hockey, football. Uh, uh, I remember reading Cat in the Hat because they wanted an American voice. Um, there was a lot of opportunity for me
Yeah,
there,
what
and
a
I
thrilling,
really, really
fertile time. So many asked to do so many different things. I love it.
well. That's the thing, and then of course, as my friend Sean Masterson always points out to me, it's the exact opposite in American show business. If you can do a lot of things, it confuses everyone,
Right.
and they really would like it if you just did one thing, like you're the dick joke guy,
Just
or
get in
you're
that one box,
right, or you're the
and we can
racist
leave you right
guy,
there.
yeah, or you're the guy who
Yeah.
wears the funny hat, or whatever you are, as opposed to someone
Right.
who might have a considered opinion on something.
Right.
And then they
Right.
always do the flip side thing where they go, they want your opinion, and then they're like, well, you're in show business. Why don't you just do what you're supposed to do, which is tell jokes or whatever?
Yeah.
Where, of course,
It's
we're
so
tax-paying
demeaning.
citizens too. Hello. And
Right.
so why don't we get to have an opinion? Why is it always just, Pete Hegseth, who's,
Ugh.
not qualified to run a doghouse?
Barely qualified to host a Fox News show.
Unbelievable.
I have another question. A culture clash related question to your time in England. It's well known that you indulge in marijuana from time to
I
time.
have,
And
yes.
I was curious, what was it like being a pot smoker immersed in the UK drinking culture?
Well, I found people that would supply me with this marijuana. It wasn't as good as American marijuana, so we would put what they call resin in it, a sort of a low grade hash. If you were lucky, you got good hash. Um, I didn't roll my joints with cigarette tobacco, even though I smoked cigarettes in those days. But that's a traditional way for English people to do it. A traditional spliff in the 90s was a couple of cigarette papers, a bunch of tobacco, and then you'd sprinkle some hash on top of that. And that was a joint. So no one ever passed it. They'd hold it forever. So you'd be like this, when are you gonna, and they'd be like, yeah, no, it's really great,
No sharing.
yeah. And on the other hand, if you took out a pack of cigarettes in the 90s, you had to offer everyone at the table one. And when you're out drinking with people, um, you didn't just buy your own drinks like you do in America. You bought a round for the table, and that was called your shout. It's your shout. So your shout meant you got up and you bought everybody a pint or whatever they're drinking, a rum and black, and then it went around the table like that. So there was a communal feeling then too. Now,
Yeah.
mind you,
Yeah.
I got in trouble a few times, but nothing ever too serious.
No, no, no Paul McCartney arrest type
Right? Well,
situations.
he put it in his suitcase. And in Japan, we were in there's two airports in Tokyo, and I can't remember the name of the other one. Nikita? I'm not getting it wrong. Anyway, there's one that's close to Tokyo and one that's not so close. And Jennifer and I saw a sign there years ago when we went over to do Nightmare with Danny Elfman, and the sign said, "If you are found with drugs, you will be executed." So they're not
Yikes.
lenient. They don't want to hear about it. You don't have an
Yeah.
excuse. You can't go, "Oh, I didn't know," because ignorance is no. So they're really serious about,
Yeah. Sounds like it.
and that means marijuana. That means marijuana. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, you probably
Yeah.
won't be executed if you bring marijuana in. They'll probably throw you in jail and then make you leave because it's too much of
Right.
a hassle. But if you had cocaine or speed or heroin or anything, class A, I think you'd be.
Don't bring it to Japan.
No, 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 no.
They were Saudi Arabia style attitude about drugs over
Oh
there.
yeah, we went to Saudi years ago with Drew and everybody to do USO tour. This is at the beginning of the Afghan war, and I remember Ryan turned to me and goes, "You're gonna have to burn all your luggage," and I'm like, "Fuck you," because we had to sign an affidavit that said you will not bring uh, pornography, drugs, religious materials. There was a couple of other items. Those ones stuck out for me. And it was in giant 50-point type. And then there was a paragraph below it in Arabic. And then there was a paragraph below that said, "I have read and understood this document." And I was like, I read and understood this part of the document, but I did not read and understand this part of the document. So we all
You
had
didn't
to
have the
sign
Google
that,
Translate on the Arabic there?
right? And then we also had to have black and white passport photos. This is 2001. We had to go to
How bizarre.
a photographer and get them to shoot, and you had to provide them with two little passport photos that were black and white, and then that was slapped into your passport, and that was your visa. And it was a very elaborate, page.
Stand up. Stand out. At Windy City Print Shop, you'll find original designs celebrating community, solidarity, mutual aid, and the belief that ordinary people can create extraordinary change. Resist with your whole chest. Windy City Print Shop. Visit windycityprintshop.etsy.com.
What do you think about matriarchy? Like, we're living under patriarchy. We've got all kinds of hierarchies. We've got religious hierarchies. We've got government hierarchies. We got patriarchy, racism, capitalism. Is it? Do you think matriarchy, which seems, I don't know, it's, they say it's like, people, when you say matriarchy, people think it's just like women running the show, right?
Right.
Like, instead of men, you have women, and then they're the ones that are like dropping the hammer down. But I think matriarchy might be like more equality. Like, it wouldn't be about shutting men out necessarily or giving them the status of women under patriarchy, but like everybody's equal. Do you think we could get there?
That's of course a very complicated question as well. I think that the world was a matriarchy
Right.
from the dawn of man up until,
For like over 100,000 years of human history.
right, I would say up until probably maybe the Bronze Age.
Agriculture.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then once things started getting codified and roles started being delineated in a more specific way, then men realized they could use their physical strength and sexual domination to terrify women and force them to do the shitty jobs that they make them do, which is cook and raise babies.
Right. It's always force. It's always by
Oh,
force.
certainly. So to get back to that, I think is a long order. However, what gives me hope is you see more and more women leaders. And so it's become more and more normal for, as much as I find young men right now kind of puzzling in so much as why are they so Nazi and fascist and why is there this loneliness epidemic and all that. And I think a lot of it has to do with, the
Isolation.
pornography, the phone and gaming and gambling and all the things that they're led to believe are important, the Andrew Tateization of the world.
Yeah.
Having said that, we've had 2 women run for presidents, both of whom, in my opinion, won in the last 8 years. And, people still say stupid shit like, well, I have to have a white man, there's no one that'll win if it's a woman. Bullshit. Hillary won the popular vote, so that puts paid to that. And Kamala, next to Quiet Piggy, got the most votes of any candidate that's ever stood for president. And that was with 90 million people not voting. And those are just on the big picture. On the local level, we have 2 black women in the Senate. We have a black woman mayor of Los Angeles. There are women governors now. That didn't really happen before. Deb Haaland is running for governor of New Mexico, and she stands a very good chance of winning. She will be the first Indian that's ever been governor of a state, if you can believe that one. She's a Native American.
Impressive.
She's a bloody Indian. Yeah. And hello, it's New Mexico.
Yeah.
So I think at the same time, Scott, it's not, I don't know that we're going to return to the matriarchy because look at the men who are running everything. I mean, you saw all the articles yesterday about what's going on with covering up the Epstein thing. And that's where patriarchy begins. Patriarchy begins with the subjugation
but that's why I'm
of
asking.
women.
I mean, is this where patriarchy ends? Like, is there a way, like, do we start demolishing some of these really illegitimate power structures?
I think they're afraid of that. And I think that's why there's this insane panic now. They created this.
I think that's the whole authoritarian ICE thing. It all fits right in there. The slide into fascism is to maintain the class structure by force.
No question. And they traffic children and they abuse and torture women and children in prison, which is one way that the patriarchy maintains their hold of terror. I'm sure you're a good old political scientist. The 7 or 8 kinds of terror in the world that are categorized, one of them is state terror, state-sponsored terror. And that's what ICE is. And they just refunded it for a gajillion, bajillion, zillion dollars. And so now we face a harm reduction. We're literally faced with, what would they say in computer world? Zeros and ones, right? If the Republican Party are zeros, and we know what they stand for, because we do, torturing children, raping young people and covering it up, giving all the money to the rich, destroying our economy, fighting foreign wars, kidnapping leaders from foreign countries and bringing them to America, which is completely illegal. All of the things I've said are illegal.
Right.
And then there's the Democrats. Yeah, people hate them. They have their faults, whatever, blah, 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 blah. Literally, if you don't vote for a Democrat, you are doing nothing to help what's going forward. And that, I have to say, is the black and white 0-1. I'd like to say there's more nuance to it than that, but there isn't.
Do you see the Democrats like coming to our rescue here?
They would have if we'd reelected
Trump era
them.
draws to a close.
If we'd reelected Joe Biden, or if we'd elected Kamala, he would be in prison because the Justice Department that was in there would have carried on doing the work they were doing. He already had 35 convictions in New York. The Georgia case got dropped because Elaine Cameron slow-walked it. President Biden halved child hunger in the United States with all the giant programs he did. Like LBJ, he put the government to work spending money on poor people. And that's what the government's supposed to do. The government's supposed to give you health care. The government's supposed to not tell you that, Medicare is an entitlement program. Fuck you. I've paid my whole life into it. You have too. Social Security and Medicare. Every paycheck you've ever got, Scott, you put money in. So entitle my ass. So
Right.
whether you think they're
Social contract.
superheroes or morally superior or anything like that is irrelevant to the matter at hand, which is harm reduction. Who is going to kill less people if they're running the show? And I would say
Mm.
Democrats are going to kill less people. They would not have destroyed U.S. aid. They would not have brought Doge in. They wouldn't have let a maniac who's high on K get into the government and steal all our identities, which they did. Which they did.
Yeah.
Well, no one's even talking about that because there's so much going on.
It makes me nervous, like they're too scared to say they want to abolish ICE. They're like, well, let's cut funding and do more training. And to me, that's just, because then they get into office and they're like, oh, well, we want to end, we want to end this immigration crisis too. And then they start bashing heads just as much.
Well, I mean, but you have to realize
I don't have a lot of faith in the Democratic Party that they can help us.
Americans are conservative. And they don't want to hear things like abolish the police and for good reason.
Let's start with abolish ICE. I mean,
right?
We could probably get behind that because even normal folks in Minneapolis are totally hating ICE. I mean,
yeah.
It's pretty broad spectrum of people hate their guts.
Right. I mean, I get what you're saying, Scott, but like I said, I don't think we have a lot of options right now. And if we don't take back the Congress and the Senate, and they will most certainly, if they get the Senate and the Congress back, roadblock him everywhere they can, and they will start trying him over and over again. They will fuck up his world. They will slow down this terrible roll into fascism that we're at right now. Whether they'll be able to solve it or not, I can't promise you that. I can't promise you they'll stop it, but they will. You saw what happened in 2018. Mind you, the terrain is a lot different because he's got his immunity and all that jazz. But you saw what happened in 2018 when they elected 118 women into the Congress. Next thing you know, he's impeached again. He's having to back off on a lot of stuff. I mean, he doesn't have a lot of wins this week. Let's look at, the record this week. He's not like winning hearts and minds all over the world.
Yeah. No, it reminds me during the Bush administration, it was probably Dick Cheney. It was somebody off the record, but said that we create our own reality. Yeah. And, I think that Republicans especially hew to this philosophy, but it pretends like there's never going to be any sort of consequences for their actions. Right. And I think we're finally getting to a place where we're finally going to start seeing some consequences.
I agree. I say it to my wife all the time. We've reached that moment where the fantasy that they've sold everyone, that white people are going to push forward and that it's going to be this great Christian ethno-state that they're dying to have us live in or whatever, where there's UFC fighting in a terrible circus in front of the White House and all that kind of nonsense, is hitting the reality of people can't afford to buy groceries and can't afford to drive their car and have to stay home because they can't eat. And so those things, that's when reality, I was almost said the rubber hits the road. That's where reality chimes in. And so I agree with you. They're reaching a point where their shitty policies and their shitty fascism aren't keeping the country going. So then what do you do if you've extracted everything from the public and you introduce AI and they're threatening to take away all our jobs and AI is going to do everything and da-da-da-da. Who's going to work? Who's going to make money and who's going to spend money? The logical fallacy of capitalism is that the ruling class is somehow benign or aware that they need to help everybody because they're not. They're not. They are not aware and they are not benign.
You had said a minute ago that government should provide health care, that government should take care of its people. I mean, I agree. I think that's kind of why government started forming in the first place, was like, how do we kind of pool some of our resources here and cooperatively figure out how to run a society? But yeah, I just don't, I don't think that anybody in I kind of think that our government is doing what the framers set out for it to do, which is let the owning class run everything. And I think, my opinion is like, maybe it's time we relook at this Constitution. And I mean, I'm not saying I don't want freedom of speech or jury trials or other things that are very good about our system. But I think the parts about, giving huge advantages to landholders is really catching up with us 250 years later.
Absolutely. I remember saying on my podcast years ago, we didn't fight the Civil War to end slavery. We fought the Civil War to institutionalize slavery and to make it a part of
Yeah,
the
into
fabric.
prisons.
Yeah, part of the fabric of the United States. That's how we're going to run the United States, with a prison class that's beneath all the other classes, and they have,
Yeah.
like the
And here's
gladiator.
Trump like dropping the hammer down, like let's go full force into for-profit prisons.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we just had a little election in California. I don't know where you are, but
Chicago, baby.
Illinois. We we had a billionaire run for governor, and he made several errors. One of which is he's never held elective office. So it would be nice if we could trust you, like maybe you'd been a mayor or a council person or a senator or an assembly person,
Right.
some kind of job. And instead, it was
Yeah.
the same old, I know what I'm doing because I'm super rich. And then
Right.
he wore this weird sort of Nazi cross on the back of his hand. I don't know if you saw any of that. Tom Steyer.
I missed that.
He did. He drew one on before every public event. They had a bunch of televised debates, which were, as you might imagine, as disgusting, horrible, and information free as a debate can be, much like the presidential debates. Because someone today on Bluesky or Threads or something said, should Hilton debate Becerra, for the gubernatorial debate? And I didn't reply, but in my mind, I was like, no, I don't see anything good coming out of debates on television anymore. You might as well have them leg wrestle with bikinis on, because that's how much people care about policy. If people cared about policy and the media cared about policy, when he said they're eating the cats and dogs, it would have been over, because that was batshit beyond all comprehension. There is no coming back from saying that black people from Somalia are eating cats and dogs in Ohio. They're not doing it. It should have been stopped right there. And, this is just one spot. So anyway, Tom Steyer, much to his credit, and I hate giving him any credit, as soon as the race was over, threw behind Becerra and said, I'm supporting him. So good for you. On the other hand, he spent $200 million. And like you said at the beginning of the show, Scott, do you know how much $200 million would do? There's 80,000 homeless people in Los Angeles.
Right. There's 4 empty homes, I think, for every homeless person in this country.
And because, like you said, the ownership class buys up real estate, keeps it empty for their own uses and to make profit. And they're not forced by the government, which is where the government kicks in, to release those houses and form public housing. Then they let people vote on whether they want public housing in their neighborhood. And that's where the NIMBYs come in. And people go, well, we don't want homeless people living here. And it's like, well, they're only poor because they don't have a place to live. They're not poor because they're evil. And it's not like the Batman cartoons from the 90s where they all remember he formed an army of homeless people and they would attack people in the Dark Knight and all that. The homeless people are simply,
you're right. Yes, of course.
Yeah, people who live in their car. Almost, you'll find, especially in California, almost all homeless people have a job. They're living below the poverty line. And I think that's where Biden pissed off the media and the Republican Party and white people in general, because one, he's a race traitor. He made a black woman his vice president and he put a black woman on the Supreme Court, and white people don't forgive that. Secondly, he didn't hate the poor. Reagan began the poor are evil and must be destroyed. Now, he didn't begin it, but he promulgated it. I don't know how old you are, but I mean, I was a grown up when Reagan was president, and Reagan was a really nasty piece of work, of work. And
president of the Screen Actors Guild, and then immediately does stabs all those Patco guys in the back, fires all of the airline controllers. Oh my God.
And
total dirtbag.
Not to mention Central America and the Middle East and some of his other great achievements.
All the full neoliberal agenda of lower taxation on the rich, privatization. It was but we still live with I think up through Biden and Obama, they didn't really do much to stop those policies.
Well, again, they have to live in the world, and they have to have rich donors, and I think that's where
Right.
The system of government that you're talking about, that's the rich people run the show government, is not. However, Scott, having said this, and I know we're talking about a lot of theoretical things, sort of, you're not going to be able to change this before the midterms, and you're not going to be able to change all of this before 2028. So I'm begging your listeners to understand that it's wildly important to minimize what this fascist government is doing. And the only way to do that is to replace Republicans at every level of public policy, because they say shit like, there's everything's too woke, or Antifa is hurting us. They say all trans people are using bathrooms, all this fictional stuff that has no bearing on the world. Meanwhile,
No, but I think what you just mentioned has the most bearing, which is that the Democrats can't even win without millionaire donors to support them. Like nobody even gets in the game without being a tool of the landholders.
I
So
can't.
that tells me that the whole system is just rotten.
It is, but when okay, let me put it this way: I'm 66. In my lifetime, JFK, LBJ, Carter, Clinton, Obama, and Biden. Every time one of them was president, the economy improved, and poor people's lot improved, and people who didn't have a seat at the table got more of a voice and more of a seat at the table. Lyndon Baines Johnson put Thurgood Marshall on the court. Bill Clinton put women in charge of cabinet positions. No one had done that. There were a bunch of women in the cabinet. Whether or not you like them personally is almost irrelevant to the fact that it literally wasn't going to happen unless Democrats pushed it forward a little bit. Because we're talking about Dick Cheney.
Deny that.
Dick Cheney was president, and on his deathbed, like every medieval king, you may have noticed, he spent an entire lifetime trying to destroy America, right? It amp up his investments, Halliburton and all the places. He was Secretary of Defense, great place to run that from.
Yeah.
He was vice president.
Yeah.
Another great place to run the show from. Really great, because no one's even watching you.
Right.
And the Islamophobia that W fomented, all of that jazz, that's Cheney. On his deathbed, when he knew he was going to croak, he went, "Please vote for the black woman. Trump's an asshole." And so I really feel like it was on every medieval king's deathbed, they would go, "You know what? I was wrong. And taxes are too high." And they would revoke taxes. And then as soon as they died, the next king would come in and reverse the policy. But almost to a person.
Or Constantine with his deathbed conversion to Christianity.
Right?
I'll wait right until now I'm a Christian.
Right? I mean, and so for me, I wasn't disappointed that Kamala had Lynn Cheney and Dick Cheney stumping for her, because I hate them beyond all measure. They're fascists, and they've never done anything good for the world. In this instance, they did one good thing, and it's literally that simple: the black and the white. This guy, here we are. If she'd won, we wouldn't be here. It's literally that simple. I don't, we would not be in a war with Iran right now.
Would the Iran war have happened? Because the Democrats and Kamala in particular said that she was interested in a war with Iran. So I don't know.
She wouldn't have kidnapped the president of Venezuela, and eggs would not be $12 a. I mean, we can argue.
No, I mean, you're right.
The fine points of it.
But to me, Greg, it's always good cop, bad cop, right? Like
that's where we're
at. The Democrats are the good cops. They'll bring you in the cup of coffee. They'll hold your hand and say, "Hey, do you need some counseling?" And then bam, what they really care about is busting the crook. The good cop and the bad cop are both cops, and they're both working for the same team. And so are the Democrats and Republicans, sadly.
I don't see it that way, but I understand why you do. But I don't know that it's that simple. I mean, like you said, the entire system is queered. And so let's just deal with the reality of, as Cesare Borgia would have said, real politic. And that means what's going to happen tomorrow, today, that we can do. You're not going to change the system overnight. That's just not going to happen. I've been wanting...
I'm not suggesting we could.
No. Listen, when I was in the 70s, when I was 10 to 20 years old, we were promised that there was going to be women's rights, Latino rights, gay rights, Black rights, Asian rights. We were going to all come together. We were going to save the environment. We were going to do all these things because that's when those ideas really got a lot of steam and everybody started to think about
Yeah.
that. And then
Yeah.
it's been squashed over and over and
Yeah.
over and over again. Not by people, not by people.
That's the Powell memo. The money got organized
Yeah.
and created the backlash that gave us Ronald Reagan and
Yeah.
neoliberalism.
And now we're fighting off these
At the
oligarchs,
other end of the pendulum swing, hopefully.
right? Now we're with these oligarchs, and the oligarchs are real aware right now that we're kind of in a 19 like right before World War One in the United States. Um, they all of the rich billionaires had the freedom to, one, not pay taxes, and two, do whatever they wanted. There were no laws to contain them whatsoever. So they often set fire to towns and killed everyone. Or if they had a mining operation or whatever, they would just shoot everybody, and and
Right.
that's
Right.
what they're pining for. They're pining
Right.
to go back to that era when there were no taxes.
I think even further to, when they say techno feudalism, I think it's more like techno slavery. They want like you hear about the control grid where they can, with your national ID, digital ID, and your digital currency, that they can just shut you off. Like, Greg, sorry, you can't spend any money anywhere now.
That's next, right? I mean, one
Yeah.
of my major fears about Musk getting this going public with this crappy, shitty space thing is I see it as a way for them to drain off everyone's retirement accounts by going end around. On the other hand, I feel like they're real aware right now of how unpopular they are, much like the oligarchs of the turn of the 20th century were. And
Yeah.
they were forced by their PR people, Ivy Lee being Rockefeller's PR person, after Ludlow when they shot up the mining town and killed all the little children, and it didn't go over that well. He hired a guy named Ivy Lee, and Ivy Lee said, you need to start handing out dimes on the street when you see people, to John D. Rockefeller.
I've heard that. Yeah.
And then the University of Chicago, the National Park System, museums. So
Libraries.
their names are on everything. All those oligarchs
Yeah.
from 100 years ago's names are on every moment of our world. They didn't do a goddamn thing to help society. But in order to, as my friend Warren Thomas used to say, throwing the public a bone so you won't burn our shit to the ground.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
I feel like that's the best. I feel like that's the best case scenario
It
under
is.
this system that we got. Is that's all we can hope for?
Yeah. I mean, when they say things like, oh, we're going to build a hospital or we're going to give a bunch of money to charity, I'm like, fuck you. If you paid over 50% of your taxes or 50% rate in taxes, like it used to be in the 50s, that would be much more effective than any charity you could ever fucking do. I don't want charity from
Well, and the way they scam it out is they make donations to charity and then use that as a tax deduction, further tax deduction.
Well, a bunch of tariff money got paid back today. That went under the news radar. Billions and billions of dollars in those pretend tariffs got paid back to the corporations. We didn't see any of it.
Right.
So you're
Right.
in California. Gas.
We're the ones who paid all the tariff money, and all goes to the corporations. that get
Gas in
paid twice.
California is close to $7 in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
At Gelson's supermarket, which mind you is a nice supermarket. It's not it's not Trader Joe's. It's a bit tonier than that.
Okay.
$11 for a dozen eggs, $7.49 for a half gallon of milk.
$1 an egg. That is expensive.
So they wanted this. They wanted to turn us into this, like they did in Britain, with Brexit. Cutting Britain off from Europe was the worst thing they could have done, literally the worst thing they could have done. And my wife Jennifer said it was worse than if they'd never belonged to Europe at all, because then they were in Europe. And here's one for you. There was a Tory who was part of Thatcher's administration, and his name was Michael Heseltine. And it was nobody's shrinking violet, good old Nazi, right-wing English guy. And when Brexit came around, they asked him, what did he think? And he said, and he was a World War II person, his age. He went, why would you take yourself from the head of the table? Why would you take your chair away? Here's Europe, France, Germany, Italy, and then, you pick them, right? So England was part of that group. England was, when they sat down to make decisions, yes, there's a giant parliament in Europe. The EU really is a thing. You can travel from one end of the continent to the other and not have to show your passport if you're a European citizen. That's astonishing. Like in America, we don't have to show passports yet. Or it won't be a passport anyway. Like you say, it'll be a chip or a national identity.
It'll be on your phone.
It'll be on your phone, definitely. And so I think they wanted that for us. The phrase that I keep hearing is extraction class, and that's what they are. They're not here to provide jobs or make America better or even improve the economy. They're literally here to extract. I mean, okay,
absolutely, rentiers. That's the term for it. And I did a post about this a while back, that the rich are parasites. And there's this great economist, Michael Hudson, who did he didn't do like a book. Well, he basically did a book about it. And that the whole fire industry, finance, insurance, real estate it's all just rentiers. It's all just setting up toll booths and getting, just extracting value from the public. We're the ones who provide all the value in this society. We do all the work.
Yeah.
We pay all the taxes.
And how are they going to carry on doing that if they eliminate us? That's the part that they haven't thought through. And I feel like right now,
well, I mean, it worked okay for the Confederacy, right? They were making tons of money with slavery, and I think there's always money in slavery, sadly.
Oh, listen, America wouldn't even be, and this is really difficult to get white people to acknowledge and or understand. The reason why America was a world power, or was, and had so much juice and such a booming economy, is we were built by slaves. We forced a bunch of people to build a country. We forced a bunch of people to pick all the crops and make all the food and do all the cooking. And for from 1619 till the 50s, we didn't pay them.
Right.
And so
you could make a lot of money when your labor cost is zero.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I mean about them wanting to go back to the good old days.
Yeah.
Never mind eminent domain. They took the country from the people who lived here. And then they carried on.
Yeah.
Anytime anyone succeeded, like a black community, they'd just wipe out the black community.
Yeah, settler colonialism.
Yeah, that's colonialism. Yeah. So we're, but here's my positive note, because I really don't trade in gloom and doom, Scott.
Good.
You see how angry people are at them right now. And even with the media in the state it's in, which is absolute obsequious, sycophantic, fawning lapdoggery, absolutely shameful lapdoggery and stenography.
Agreed.
You literally repeat any lie that anyone says, and that's supposed to be journalism.
I mean, well, you talked about social media being all billionaires, but mass media is too. It's about 6 companies that are all owned by billionaires.
Mass media is worse. On social media, you might actually hear from someone who's thought about something and or has a valid opinion, or is, I'm sure we all follow Heather Cox Richardson and
sure.
Terry Canfield and some of the more literate Paul Krugman, people who have insight because they studied, not just I think this and this is how I feel, and white people are getting a raw deal and there's trans people in my bath, there's always going to be that.
Yeah.
But I feel like that even with the media being as horrible as it is, they're aware right now of how unpopular they are.
Yeah.
And I'll go even further. I'm in a comedy group and we play America. We don't just play the coast, right? We play America. You know what I mean by that. Like, Tulsa, Oklahoma.
All the small towns in our heart of our country.
Exactly. Elkhart, Indiana, blah, blah, blah. And we were in North Carolina a couple weeks ago, and there had been that giant crisis over the AI center going up down there. And I made a joke to a crowd that was all military. Everyone in this town worked for the military. Everyone in the town worked for the military, because we bring people out of the audience and talk to them, and they all, I'm in the Air Force and whatever. And I made some Musk jokes and I made some AI jokes, and the place went crazy. And this is a rednecky place that for sure voted for Piggy. So their popularity isn't big, even with the people who
No.
voted for them. It doesn't mean they won't vote for him again. Of course they will, because white supremacy is everything. But it's changing, and they're scared of it, and that's why you see them. Why Alex Karp from Palantir keeps going on social media every other day and saying his and revoking and revamping his awesome plans to destroy the world and try to couch it in a new way so that we all swallow it.
AI murder dogs.
Yeah, I mean you see them all, Sam Altman and Karp and
Walking it back.
Yeah.
Or fleeing the country.
yeah, they're going to do this, they're going to do that,
Like Peter Thiel just
and
did.
it's like, you're not going to do shit. But they're aware that people are scared of them, and when the public takes matters into their own hands, you may remember a month ago how many warehouses were burned to the ground. The media was really reluctant to cover that story. Really reluctant.
They were indeed.
Because it was people going to the shitty place where they work and burning it down because they hated the fucking people who owned it. And if that isn't people power, I don't know what the fuck is. Now, the Snow Kings thing,
man.
So I believe that things are, we're reaching a really weird crisis point, as you and I discussed earlier, where the fantasy of their bullshit is meeting the reality of what's really going on. And there's no way this lasts 3 more years. And here's my big prediction, and I have nothing to back this up. I want you to know before I say it that I have no facts, facts to back this up. This is simply my opinion. Piggy, doesn't make it to the end of the term. And I don't mean he dies. I just mean it's not going to finish. This is a disaster. It is a sled sliding into a coal mine at 1,000 miles an hour. And everybody's piled on the back of the sled. All the oligarchs are talking about all of the morons in his administration, all of whom are completely unqualified to do anything. Literally, they couldn't work at a Taco Bell. They don't have the wherewithal to work. You would not allow Kash Patel into your home if he was the cable guy. So
he would look so surprised.
Right? Yeah, he did. I don't think he makes it to the end of the term.
I've heard people suggest that he might just walk out and just call it quits, just resign.
Those things.
I don't know.
I mean, the walking out is a difficult one because there may be a legal area where he's not safe, and that's what he cares about most of all. He doesn't care about anything else more than that.
For sure.
But yes, I could have seen that. I would have thought that if the shit hit the fan, if Democrats were still in charge and they were going to really charge him and put him in jail, that he would have split and gone to Saudi or Russia or somewhere. I could have seen that too. Well, Idi Amin did.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not
leave the country.
It's not at all unusual for dictators to fuck off to another right-wing place. I mean, how many right-wing dictators?
You talk about Iran. That's what set off the Iranian Revolution in the 70s.
Jimmy Carter, arguably the most human rights-oriented president of our lifetime, allowed the Shah of Iran to come here, and that was because of deals we had made 30 years before.
Yeah.
So
when we ousted Mossadegh.
Exactly. When we ousted their legally elected government and put in our own, which was, by the way, Norman Schwarzkopf's father was in charge of that whole one of.
No, you thinking of Kermit Roosevelt, the son of Teddy, I think.
Yes, Kermit, not the one who was at D-Day. That was Teddy Jr., I believe.
And not the Kermit of the Frog.
Not Kermit the Frog. I feel I never want to feel pessimistic because I'm a white privileged person who has a job. So if I'm just going to start whining and sniveling and saying it's all gone to shit, I never write we're cooked or any of that shit on social media. We know we're cooked. My parents, my family were Jews from Germany, and we were in Germany years ago at a winery doing this thing with Drew Carey, and the Baron von Kupfenberg was there. This is 2006. He was 90-something then, so most assuredly he's dead. And he said he owned the Kupfenberg, or he was an owner of the Kupfenberg winery in Mainz, Germany, which is going back to it, the northernmost boundary of the Roman Empire. The
Nice.
Rhine,
right on the Rhine,
where they stopped. Right, they stopped there, and then no further, no more Denmark or any of that. We have enough. So in the winery, and I'll try to make this as brief as humanly possible, was dug down 7 or 8 stories below ground, And we were taking the tour, and I said to him, Baron, uh, who built this winery? And he said, the Romans. And I said, the Romans? And he went, the Germans built it. And the Romans went, get down there and dig that fucking winery out, right? So when you got to the
Yeah.
bottom, and we didn't get to the seventh floor down, we got to about the fourth or fifth, freezing cold, freezing cold. Underground, and by the way, it was 100 degrees outside. It was really warm that summer. And all the champagne bottles were like this, so that their corks were wet. They were kept in wooden pallets where the champagne touched the cork. And I mean millions of bottles, right, of real champagne or German champagne. So we get up to the top, and now we're done. And he says, I was in the German army and I was mustered out in 1945. I was a captain. And the room goes quiet. Now,
As one does when one admits that one was a Nazi.
right now, mind you, he was royalty. So
Right.
I said to my wife, there's a very slight chance that he wasn't a Nazi. Because if you recall, the people that were caballing to kill Hitler, von Stauffenberg and all them, were also royalty. The royalty let him come in,
Okay.
as has been well recorded over time. The really wealthy people of Germany were like, we'll be able to handle the Germans. They're from Bavaria. They're stupid. They thought of Hitler and Himmler, Goebbels, Goering, what we think of Kaspitell, Hegseth, right? They thought they were that big of savages and stupid. They believed in the occult. They took drugs. They were high on speed. They were disorganized. You know what I mean? All the same elements. I mean, it's analogous. It's not.
Sure.
It's not an exact analogy. It's analogous.
I hear you.
And so everyone went quiet, and then he said to my wife on the side, what's your husband's last name? And she said, Proops. And he went, I knew many Proops before the war. And
Chilling.
I come back to that a lot because that's where we're at now. And whether you're a Jew, whether you're a Muslim, whether you're a Latin, whether you're one of these people who's being swooped off the street by ICE, whether you're a woman poet, whether you're a small child who has no wherewithal, this is what's going on, you know? You can slice it and dice it however the fuck you like, but when there's people incarcerated illegally and they're dying in incarceration, which they are, that's a concentration camp. And so, I mean, I don't want everyone to bum out. The people are fighting against it. There's a lot of great Congress people who are going to the camps every day, trying to get people out. They are getting people released. They're trying to improve the conditions, this, that. But, you know, you have to understand, it's not ancient history at all. It's what's happening now.
Right.
And something that I like to tell white people that they never want to hear is, if you weren't a white person, America was never different. This president is terrible, and he's worse than a lot of them. But pick a decade. Pick the 40s.
Well, I think, you know,
the 40s.
I always like to think of the black community, the African American community, as like the canary in the coal mine. And, you know, they've been living with police brutality and all, you know, being treated like second class citizens for forever. But now it's coming for the rest of us.
Yeah.
We're all going to be the African American community.
Yeah. And that's what I think white people have to really deal with. There's no hiding in your room anymore.
But it's galvanizing if you realize it. I mean, unity is the way out. As you say, the people are powerful. It's not all about money, and that's why the billionaires are scared.
We stopped slavery in the United States. We, at one point, had a Voting Rights Act, which we can get back if we work hard enough toward that. The billionaires are really mortified right now because they know they're wildly unpopular, and they also know that they're lying about all their little plans. Their plans are nonsense. They don't have a plan. Making
that, and one thing that I always say is that cynicism is self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right?
Because if you're cynical and you believe that it's going to be bad, then you're not going to lift a finger to stop anything. You're just like, oh, well, it's already happened, and then I can't do anything about it. That's the wrong attitude. You gotta have at least a little bit of hope that you can change something in order to change something.
No question. I mean, that's horribly why I brought up the Nazis is they were eventually, of course, defeated and then absorbed into our government. But it's people who are going to do everything. And I see that people are activated and motivated right now. Everything that happens isn't going to be a win. That's the other thing. You have to realize there's going to be as many
Sure.
losses as wins. Um, but we have a real chance in the next few months, I think, to make a giant point here. And if you could remove their lever of Congress, meaning both the Senate and the Congress, you're going to go a long way um, towards slowing this down and reversing parts of it to the point where things would get better, which I think is what everybody
Yeah.
wants. I mean, the general
I
idea,
think
I think,
so
is that
too.
people want to be left alone. But the problem is you can't be left alone if you're living in a fascist state because you're not going to be
Yeah.
left alone. You're going to have to
Right.
chime in at some point and do something.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of
Yeah.
privileged people, and I include myself as a privileged person, but I'm aware of it. A lot of privileged people aren't willing to even acknowledge that anything's going on. They want to stay gambling with sports and, you know, go golfing and
Oh man, we were so close to me being able to say, well, I want to stop on that positive note.
Yeah. Let's stop on the positive note. The positive note is it's going to change because it can't keep going on the way it is.
I agree.
I can't
I
guarantee a
think you're
happy
right.
ending, but I
You know, there's too many angry people out there, and they're just not going to stand for it.
yeah. And the other thing we have to do is on our team is accept each other, you know, and like go,
Yeah.
okay, you believe this, I don't fucking believe it, but if we all band together here, we're gonna win. There's no
That's exactly right. You know, I mean, I don't agree with you about everything. I don't agree with with people who are on the Republican side, but we can find common ground that this sucks. Having billionaires own everything sucks, and it should be different.
Yep. This is quite a
All
comedy
right.
show.
Well, we'll end right there. Greg, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you, sir.
Thanks,
You
Scott.
are a legend and an intellect, and it's been a real pleasure having this time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it. Hey, let me know when this comes out.
Okay, shouldn't be too long. And we'll end this show the way I always like to by saying, let's make them pay.
Right on.